I want to introduce you to Stephen. Stephen is an artist and he lives in Sheffield. This is a self-portrait that Stephen has painted. He's painted himself with his well-being journal, which has helped him with his mental health. He's also painted himself with a completely black background, as the electrical circuits in Stephen's home blew more than 10 years ago, and he hasn't been able to afford to get them rewired. He's been living without electricity ever since. His income is only £340 per month. Stephen is part of a choir in Sheffield, where he's got to know other people struggling against poverty. He has decided to use his skills and gifts to amplify their experiences and has painted a series of portraits of his peers. In each portrait, he has depicted the people with two things: something that represents their experience of poverty and something that represents their dream for the future. Stephen's paintings and the experiences they uncover demonstrate how people struggling against poverty every day can and should be at the heart of the movement to end poverty. The reality of their lived experience shows us that poverty denies people dignity. It strips them of their agency and it withholds their power. But their dreams also show us that every person has been created with the potential for full and flourishing life, where they bring all that they have and are to shape our communities and our society for the better. The spirit of the Dreams and Realities exhibition articulates the call to action at the heart of the Let's End Poverty movement. We know that the reality is poverty in the UK is rising and deepening. Over 14.4 million people in the UK are struggling against poverty every day, including 4.3 million children. Almost 4 million people are experiencing destitution, the deepest form of poverty that we had all but eradicated in the UK, including 1 million children. This has risen by over 50% since 2017. But we also know that things can change. Poverty is a result of choices about how we prioritise our resources and who we deem worthy of our help. Because of a series of events and choices, poverty in the UK is increasing and deepening, but this also means that we can choose something different. That a dream for safe and affordable housing, decent incomes that at the most basic are enough to afford the essentials, fair access to healthcare, mental health support for carers and children doesn't just have to be a dream, but a vision for what our society could be. Let's End Poverty is a diverse, growing movement of people who are united behind a vision of the UK where poverty can't keep anyone down. Since we launched in October 2023, we're bringing together people and organisations who want to say that we can't and won't accept a society where poverty exists, and to call on our political leaders to do something about it. Together, we're getting equipped and empowered to speak up and call for change from our leaders to ensure that we get on track to end poverty in the UK for good. The Methodist Church in Britain is a leading voice in this movement because we believe that poverty and inequality go against the very heart of God. Local churches across the Methodist connection have stepped up their response to this increasing poverty and are working hard in their local communities to support their neighbours facing hardship. From these local connections and from decades of working to campaign against poverty, we know what causes poverty. We know that solutions already exist to end the way our systems and structures trap people in poverty and hardship. But we also know that we can't do it on our own. We need big picture change at every level of society, particularly from our political leaders. We know that viable, workable policy solutions already map out how we might end poverty in the UK, whether that's ending rules like the 2-child limits on social security, increasing levels of universal credit to ensure people can afford the essentials, or increasing the amount of affordable, safe housing and addressing gaps in healthcare and mental health support, amongst so many other things. But what's currently missing in the roadmap of how we might turn the tide on poverty in the UK is political willingness. The conversation is stuck at crisis response to the cost of living, rather than the moral scandal that poverty is rising in our communities. We're missing strategic planning about what coordinated action to tackle poverty across the board can and should look like, that includes people who are experiencing poverty at the heart of decision making. We need to show our political leaders that our communities want change and we're ready to support it to happen. That's why we've come together, to empower better conversations to happen from our kitchen tables to the cabinet table, to make sure our political leaders know that tackling poverty must be their priority. We certainly don't underestimate the size of this challenge. We know that ending poverty is a big vision, but we believe that big vision is the place we have to start from, especially as people of faith. Our churches are great at meeting people's needs with food, warmth and welcome. And we can't and won't stop doing this. God calls us to feed the hungry and to comfort the orphan and the widow. But we also need to ask whether there is a bigger problem to tackle when we see the same people week in, week out, who need our support because our kindness hasn't solved the problems they go home to when they leave our church halls. Of course, we want to begin from a place where people are warm, fed and safe today, and to use what we have been gifted to help with that. But we also need to ask why we can't ensure that they are warm, fed and safe tomorrow, and to challenge those in a position of power to make this a reality. We need to be in solidarity with our neighbours who are struggling against poverty by taking action for a future where they can thrive and not just survive. That's why we're coming together. By coming together under the banner of Let's End Poverty, our aim is to connect a diverse group of people who have experienced poverty, witnessed poverty, or who are working to tackle poverty, united behind a vision of a UK where poverty can't keep anyone down. We don't just want to alleviate poverty in the UK, we want to end it. That's the kind of transformation that we want to be part of.